An air of gloom remains over northern Australia, despite the decision 2 weeks ago to end the suspension of the live cattle trade to Indonesia. Not one boat has been booked, let alone loaded, and it looks like it could be at least another 3 or 4 weeks before exporters get Australian government approval. The financial impact is building by the day.
We need to see government very much focused on assisting industry to stay alive, to put it on life support, because at the moment we have people who are going due to financial circumstances and physical, logistical circumstances, they're now being placed into some pretty bad territory.
A question everyone is dodging at present, perhaps because there appears to be no logical answer, is what happens to upwards of 300,000 head of cattle, which won't go north to Indonesia this year because exporters will bump into the wet season when it's almost impossible to muster or transport cattle. Now here's a typical Northern Territory mob. If they're not on a boat to Indonesia very soon, they'll stay in the paddock and almost certainly get fatter and fatter. And no doubt by the time the next dry season comes around, they'll be well above the 350 kilo limit set by Indonesia. So where do 300,000 fat Brahmins then go? Too fat to export? And if they're sent south, the taxi fare would be $150 to $200 a head. And on top of that, most of them would need to be fed even more to attract the interest of meatworks. Now, the economics of the export ban are now devastating. The bottom line is no income for many individuals and companies for 3 months or even more. On Friday, Beef Central newsletter quoted a rural councillor in the Territory as saying many Territory businesses are on the financial brink and the situation is getting worse by the day. So what happened last week at the sale yards? Well, there was a mix of signals with throughput up, restockers very active despite the slowing of fodder growth and strong competition for tight supplies of prime cattle. Trade cattle prices continue to yo-yo, up and down by much the same margin on alternate weeks. Japoc prices reflect the toughness of the export market, cow demand is firm and feeder steers are popular, lifting 11 cents. And predictably, there's little news on the live trade. Some breeder cattle are being shipped, but I'm told the new supply chain protocols are proving extremely difficult to implement, and even the biggest companies are failing audits. The Eastern Young Cattle Indicator has lifted 2% since June and remains 6% higher than this time last year at $3.80. Wet and cold conditions impacted on lamb and sheep markets. Throughput last week was down 32% on the same week last July. So our lamb indicator went up 3 cents and a drop in quality saw mutton slip 6 cents a kilo. And the pig market was again firm. Rates for bacon and pork are steady across all states. Dairy farmers appear to be doing okay, at least that's the case if you export, but that cheap supermarket milk remains a real problem. Export prices for butter and skim milk powder are softening somewhat and might slip even further in coming weeks, but those prices remain historically high. To grains now, where wheat is coming into sharp focus as export competition emerges as the key element in world price levels for wheat. Russia is now looking set to become a major export player, in contrast to last year when they exported just about zilch. So wheat slipped 22 cents in Chicago. Corn also fell despite ongoing concern over drought conditions, and soybeans remained steady on the back of some handy sales to China. Our ASX traded significant volumes and values were softish. The Commonwealth Bank Agribusiness Report says some East Coast wheat will need a kind spring to meet production forecasts. Old cut prices are strong for wheat, steady for canola, while sorghum slipped to a 12-month low. Back to New York now for the softs, and further contract cancellations put more pressure on cotton, while sugar has consolidated recent gains. Cotton dropped below $1 a pound for the first time since last September, and sugar buyers are still unsure about the size of the Brazil crop. Most of the sentiment is very bullish. And wool sellers and buyers are on vacation, back in a few weeks. So that's the Landline check on prices.